Hello world, welcome to another episode of my weekly rant about ideas to change our African mindsets. My name is Emmanuel S, and today I'll be discussing ways to increase our self-belief and imagination. Last week I discussed why formal education does not seem to mold us, the educated Africans, to perform fundamentally different from our uneducated colleagues. I mentioned that we end up having the same mindsets and behaving in similar manners as those who never went to school. I contrasted this reality with what happens in some exemplary developed countries. In those countries, what is important is not whether one has formal education or not, but rather whether one shows self-belief and imagination. I got some really good feedback from you guys, and today I want to delve further into this subject. What makes people who end up contributing immensely to the development of their communities, what makes them tick, irrespective of education, is them having curiosity, continuously learning, being able to read critically, being able to analyze things, and creating or having original ideas and things. You don't need formal education to have these 5 critical traits. In fact, I've come across many people who have gone through formal education but evidently lack these 5 traits. This is mainly because oftentimes formal education purposefully prevents kids from expressing curiosity, from increasing their knowledge beyond the school curriculum, from learning to read critically, because schools are more interested in kids memorizing meaningless facts just to pass exams. Schools may also often prevent kids from analyzing issues from their own perspectives. And lastly, many schools may totally dissuade children from expressing original thoughts outside the conventional wisdom. I remember a personal experience I had that illustrates this reality. In my early school days, I used to argue with my friends whether the world has an end. Because we were not using English but rather our tribal language, which had the same word for country, planet, and universe, in effect, we did not know what we were arguing about. But largely, we were arguing whether the landmass that we stand on goes in all directions without end. Around primary 3 or 4, I used to sleep listening to a small radio, and one night the presenter discussed the topic of oceans. From that radio program, I got to learn that where the land ends is the beginning of these big lakes called oceans. So I started winning over my friends by explaining how the landmass has an end, but the oceans go on forever without an end. That was my mind. I also learned that the nearest ocean to Uganda was the Indian Ocean, but the biggest ocean was the Pacific. So one day in primary 4, the social studies teacher erroneously mentioned that the Indian Ocean was the biggest ocean. So, excited with my newfound knowledge about oceans, I eagerly went and corrected him that the Pacific Ocean was the biggest. As you can imagine, in our backward way of teacher-centric education as opposed to student-centric education, the teacher felt challenged or embarrassed and physically punished me for what he called my mischief. It has been more than 30 years since that incident, but I still remember the details and that teacher's name. In fact, if I was to meet him today, how I would love to tell him that you tried to kill my curiosity and my self-belief as a 9-year-old, but you failed. When I wrote my first book, The Fourth Heritage, That incident from 30 years ago was still very vivid in my mind. For those who have read my book, you will be able to tell that the book is not academic, but rather it is a personal expression and persuasion of how my self-belief and imagination did not die, either with that teacher or with anything that formal education tried to box me into. I'm sure many of you have similar personal stories about how formal education may have tried to kill your self-belief or curiosity. I hope you got over those challenges and you still keep your curiosity, you are continuously learning, you read critically, you analyze things from your personal perspective, and you express original thoughts and ideas. With those 5 personal traits, you will not lack self-belief and imagination, which are a very big key of successfully living in the modern world. Thank you for watching, and remember, changing our mindsets is a struggle.